So you're standing in your local gun shop eyeing that tiny 22 caliber pistol and you're thinking, man, this thing is so easy to shoot, maybe I should get it for home defense. Hold up right there, because what I'm about to tell you might completely change your mind about using a 22 long rifle for protecting yourself and your family. The uncomfortable truth is that while everyone loves shooting 22s at the range, they're arguably one of the worst choices you could make when your life depends on it. The uncomfortable reality about rimfire ignition. Let's start with something that might shock you. That cute little 22 cartridge sitting in your gun hasn't changed much since the 1880s. Yeah, you heard that right. While every other aspect of firearms technology has evolved dramatically, rimfire cartridges are still using basically the same design our great-great-grandfathers used. Why does this matter? Because that ancient design is the root of the 22's biggest problem. When you look at a 22 long rifle cartridge, there's no central primer like you'd find on a 9mm or 45 ACP. Instead, the priming compound is smeared around the entire rim of the cartridge. When your firing pin strikes that rim, it has to compress and ignite that compound. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. This is where things get really problematic. That priming compound isn't perfectly distributed around the rim. There are gaps, inconsistencies, and weak spots that can prevent proper ignition. What this means in real-world terms is that when you squeeze that trigger in a life-or-death situation, you might just hear click instead of bang. Studies have shown that rimfire ammunition failures are significantly more common than centerfire failures. We're talking about a reliability difference that could literally be the difference between life and death. The feeding nightmare that nobody talks about. But wait, it gets worse. Even if your 22 fires reliably, there's another massive problem that most people completely ignore: feeding issues. Those rimmed cartridges that make 22 long rifles so distinctive, they're actually terrible for magazine-fed semi-automatic firearms. The rim design that works perfectly fine in a revolver becomes a nightmare when you're trying to stack these rounds in a magazine and feed them smoothly into the chamber. Modern centerfire cartridges were designed specifically to feed reliably in semi-automatic actions. The 22 long rifle was not. What this means is that your 22 semi-auto pistol is significantly more likely to jam than any comparable centerfire firearm. When you're talking about self-defense, a jam isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially fatal. Some manufacturers have gotten better at designing 22 semi-autos that feed more reliably, but even the best ones still can't match the reliability of a centerfire pistol. This is just physics and engineering. You can't completely overcome the fundamental design limitations of a rimmed cartridge in a semi-auto action. The stopping power myth that costs lives. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, stopping power. The gun community loves to argue about this topic, and there's a lot of misinformation floating around. Some people claim stopping power is a myth, others swear by it. The reality is more nuanced than either extreme position. When we talk about a cartridge's ability to stop a threat, we're really talking about its ability to create enough tissue damage to either physically incapacitate someone or psychologically convince them to stop their attack. The 22 long rifle struggles with both of these mechanisms. From a physical standpoint, the 22 is moving relatively slowly compared to centerfire cartridges. This means it relies almost entirely on what's called the permanent crush cavity, basically the hole it pokes through tissue. Unlike faster-moving bullets that can create temporary cavities and transfer more energy to surrounding tissue, the 22 only damages what it directly touches. The psychological aspect is equally concerning. While any gunshot wound is traumatic, the immediate psychological impact of being shot with a 22 might not be enough to instantly stop a determined attacker. Someone hopped up on adrenaline or drugs might not even immediately realize they've been shot with such a small caliber. Real-world performance that will shock you. Let's get into some hard numbers that might surprise you. The CCI Mini Mag, which is considered one of the better 22 long rifle loads, pushes a 40-grain bullet at about 1,235 feet per second. That gives us a power factor of around 49.4. Compare that to even the much maligned .32 ACP, which has a power factor of 64 with a 71-grain full metal jacket bullet. Your average factory 9mm load? We're talking about a power factor around 130. These numbers aren't just academic, they translate to real-world performance differences. When ballistics experts test ammunition in gelatin blocks that simulate human tissue, they look for penetration between 12 and 18 inches. This ensures the bullet can reach vital organs even after passing through an arm or other obstacles. Testing of common .22 long rifle loads shows penetration depths that are often inadequate. The CCI Mini-Mag typically penetrates about 8 inches in ballistic gelatin. The Winchester Super X hollow point performs even worse, often stopping at around 6 to 8 inches. This means that even a perfect center of mass hit might not reach the heart or other vital organs, especially if the attacker is wearing heavy clothing or the bullet has to travel through an arm first. The expansion problem nobody mentions. Here's something that might really surprise you. Hollow point .22 bullets often make the penetration problem even worse. You might think that a hollow point would be better for self-defense because it creates a larger wound channel, but with the .22 long rifle, the opposite is often true. When a .22 hollow point expands, it becomes wider, but also penetrates much less deeply. Those segmented hollow points that are devastating to small game, they break into multiple pieces when they hit tissue, but each piece only penetrates an inch or two. Against a human-sized target, this means you're getting multiple very shallow wounds instead of one deep wound that reaches vital organs. The CCI 40-grain segmented hollow point is a perfect example of this problem. It absolutely destroys small animals because each segment creates a separate wound channel in a tiny target. But against a human, those same segments stop after just a couple of inches of penetration, nowhere near deep enough to reach anything vital. The magazine capacity limitation. Another factor that often gets overlooked is magazine capacity. Most .22 long rifle pistols hold between 8 and 12 rounds. While that might sound like plenty, remember that you're dealing with a cartridge that may require multiple hits to stop a threat. If you're facing multiple attackers, or if you miss some shots under stress, you could find yourself running out of ammunition very quickly. Compare this to modern centerfire pistols that often hold 15 or more rounds of much more effective ammunition. When you're dealing with a cartridge that may require multiple hits to be effective, having fewer rounds available becomes a serious tactical disadvantage. The combination of questionable reliability, limited stopping power, and reduced capacity creates a perfect storm of problems that make the .22 long rifle a poor choice for self-defense. But there's still more to consider. The over-penetration paradox that makes no sense. Here's something that's going to blow your mind. Despite all the problems with the .22 long rifle not penetrating deeply enough, it can actually over-penetrate in certain situations. I know it sounds contradictory, but stick with me here because this creates a whole new set of problems. In an indoor environment, that little .22 bullet can zip right through drywall and keep going. Unlike larger, heavier bullets that tend to dump their energy quickly when they hit obstacles, the lightweight .22 can maintain enough velocity to be dangerous even after passing through walls. This means you could end up with a cartridge that's simultaneously too weak to reliably stop an attacker and too penetrative to be safe in a residential setting. Think about this scenario. You're using a .22 for home defense, you fire multiple shots because the small caliber isn't immediately effective, and now you've got bullets potentially traveling through walls into neighboring rooms or even neighboring houses. You're dealing with a cartridge that can't reliably do its primary job, but can still cause unintended harm to innocent people. The deflection factor that nobody considers. There's another issue that rarely gets discussed: deflection. The lightweight .22 bullet is much more likely to be deflected by heavy clothing, bones, or other obstacles than a heavier centerfire bullet. What this means in practical terms is that even if you place your shots perfectly, the bullet might not end up where you intended. Heavy winter coats, thick leather jackets, or even just the angle of impact can cause a .22 bullet to change direction dramatically. This unpredictability makes it even harder to reliably place shots in vital areas. When you're already dealing with a cartridge that requires precise shot placement to be effective, adding deflection into the mix makes the problem exponentially worse. The ammunition quality gamble. Let's talk about something that could literally cost you your life: ammunition quality. With centerfire cartridges, you can generally trust that a round from a reputable manufacturer will fire when you pull the trigger. With .22 long rifle, it's basically a gamble every time. Those bulk packs of .22 ammo that everyone loves because they're cheap, they're absolutely terrible for self-defense. The quality control on bulk .22 ammunition is notoriously poor. You might get lucky and have a box where everything fires, or you might end up with a handful of duds mixed in with your good rounds. When you're talking about self-defense, you can't afford to play Russian roulette with your ammunition. Even premium .22 long rifle ammunition, while better than bulk packs, still can't match the reliability of centerfire rounds. The fundamental design limitations of rimfire ignition mean that even the best .22 ammunition will have more failures than the worst centerfire ammunition. The false economy of .22 long rifle. A lot of people choose .22 long rifle for self-defense because it's cheap to shoot and the guns are affordable. This is classic penny-wise, pound-foolish thinking. Yes, you can buy a .22 pistol for less money than a 9mm, and yes, the ammunition is cheaper. But what are you really saving money on? You're potentially saving money on a tool that might fail you when you need it most. When we're talking about protecting your life and the lives of your family members, is saving a few $100s really worth the risk? The difference in cost between a quality .22 pistol and a quality 9mm pistol is minimal compared to the massive difference in effectiveness. The training trap that catches everyone. Here's something that sounds logical on the surface but is actually dangerous thinking. The idea that because .22 is easier to shoot, it's better for people who can't handle larger calibers. This argument gets made for elderly shooters, people with physical limitations, or those who are extremely recoil sensitive. While it's true that .22 is easier to shoot accurately, what good is accurate shooting if the cartridge you're shooting isn't effective? If someone truly cannot handle the recoil of a 9mm or .380, there are other solutions that don't involve compromising on effectiveness. Modern low-recoil ammunition, proper grip techniques, and gun selection can make centerfire cartridges manageable for almost anyone. The training trap is thinking that because you can shoot a .22 well, it's automatically a good choice for self-defense. Being able to put 10 rounds in a tiny group at the range is great, but it's meaningless if those rounds won't stop a threat when you need them to. The revolver solution that's still not enough. Some people argue that you can solve the reliability and feeding issues by using a .22 revolver instead of a semi-automatic pistol. While it's true that a revolver eliminates feeding problems and makes dealing with misfires easier, it doesn't address the fundamental ballistic limitations of the cartridge. A .22 revolver is certainly more reliable than a .22 semi-auto, but you're still dealing with the same penetration issues, the same limited stopping power, and the same ammunition quality problems. Plus, most .22 revolvers hold only 6 to 8 rounds, which is even fewer than many .22 pistols. The revolver solution is like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. It might help with one symptom, but it doesn't fix the underlying problem. The myth of multiple shots, making up for lack of power. There's this persistent myth that you can make up for the .22's lack of stopping power by firing multiple shots quickly. The theory is that several .22 rounds can equal the effectiveness of one larger caliber round. This is fundamentally flawed thinking for several reasons. First, every shot you fire is another chance for a malfunction. Since .22 rimfire ammunition is less reliable than centerfire ammunition, the more shots you fire, the more likely you are to experience a failure. Second, in a high-stress situation, your accuracy is going to suffer. Banking on being able to place multiple precise shots under extreme stress is unrealistic. Finally, the more shots you fire, the more ammunition you're using up, and the more opportunities you're creating for overpenetration and collateral damage. The multiple shot theory essentially admits that the .22 is inadequate while trying to justify its use anyway. After weighing all the facts, the verdict is clear. While the .22 LR has its uses in training and small game hunting, it falls short when it comes to personal protection. Reliability concerns, limited stopping power, and inconsistent penetration make it a risky choice in life or death situations. Your safety deserves better. Proven centerfire options like .380 ACP, 9mm, or .45 ACP offer far more dependable performance. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe for more straight shooting firearms content, and share your thoughts in the comments below.